Welcome to Kind Curiosity, where we explore those who have the audacity to be kind. My name is Felicia. This episode will address topics relating to grief and loss. If you or someone you know is experiencing depression, please be aware that there are organizations available to provide support. Additional resources can be found in the show notes. In this week's episode, I look at what happens when grief doesn't just sit quietly, it builds something. I want to highlight parents who have experienced the unimaginable, the loss of a child. And instead of folding inward, they chose to build outward. Not because they weren't broken, but when love has nowhere else to go, it builds. Today, I'm sharing stories of people who had the audacity to turn loss into impact. In episode 8, I spoke with Melissa Maloney. Melissa and her husband Greg lost their only child, Sophia Marie, on March 22, 2023. When Melissa could not find a location to properly celebrate the short life of their daughter, she spoke with her husband about creating a space that would truly reflect a celebration of life, so that others who did not want to go the traditional funeral route would have a place to honor their loved ones. Melissa and Greg were able to find a location with lots of windows so the celebrations being held would be filled with natural light to invoke a sense of peace and calm. Once they found the ideal location, friends and family helped them build out the space to the specifications Melissa had in her mind. In January 2025, I had the pleasure of attending the formal grand opening in Green Bay, Wisconsin. Nothing prepares parents for planning a celebration of life when joy and sorrow collide so sharply. She wanted a place that will bring about laughter and memories. A gathering for you was created to allow those who experience loss to commune, laugh, smile, celebrate, and remember. It is a place to truly celebrate the life of the person being honored. Traditionally, when a loved one is lost, options are limited to a place of worship or a funeral home. Melissa could not see any of these as places she wanted to honor her child. She wanted a place that would invoke smiles, laughter, and tears of joy in remembrance. Before a celebration is booked, Melissa will sit with the family to learn about the person being remembered. She asks about their favorite food, candy, and drinks. She asks additional questions about their lifestyle and extended family. Did they serve in the military? What was their favorite sport or sports team? What did they like to do in their spare time? What gave them joy? Melissa then personalizes the venue to honor that person. When a child is being remembered, she will include dozens of teddy bears of all sizes to represent that child. The lights inside and outside the venue can be changed to the colors specified by the family. A popular touch is the personalization of Sophia's candy cart, which would be stocked with the favorite treat of the person being honored. If the person is a veteran, Melissa will place flags outside the venue that state, "A veteran is being honored today." The venue does not allow the displaying of bodies, but it does allow the display of ashes on a personalized stand in which the family can bring treasure items to display alongside the urn. Families can bring food, snacks, and non-alcoholic drinks so that everyone can relax and remember. A magnetic wall for pictures and notes displays those items without damage. Melissa spoke on a particular service she held, which included a video featuring the individual who was being honored. They were aware of their terminal condition and wished to convey a meaningful message to friends and family members. Melissa stated everyone laughed and cried tears of joy from seeing and hearing their loved one more time. Sophia Maloney's brief life gave flight to a venue that displays beauty and joy, while providing closure for others in their darkest hours. All because Melissa and Greg had the audacity to think of others in their own time of grief and mourning. Nicole Hockley and Mark Barden co-founded the Sandy Hook Promise after losing their children Dylan Hockley and Daniel Barden in December of 2012, when a gunman entered Sandy Hook Elementary School in Newtown, Connecticut, and ruthlessly gunned down 20 children and 6 educators. Instead of being consumed by vengeance, which would have been understandable, they built prevention programs through the Sandy Hook Promise. The mission is to educate and empower youth and adults to prevent violence in schools, homes, and communities. The program consists of 2 component parts. The first being Start with Hello. Start with Hello builds a strong and resilient school community by empowering students to embrace empathy and reject bullying and social isolation. The program is designed to educate students on identifying loneliness and social isolation, and to encourage proactive engagement with individuals experiencing these challenges. The 3 steps in the Start with Hello model are: 1. See someone alone. Learn to recognize the signs of loneliness and social isolation. 2. Reach out and help. Find out what you can do to help others feel included. 3. Start with Hello. Discover how to break the ice and strike up a conversation. According to their site, Start with Hello builds student awareness and skills in belonging, identity, self-esteem, warning signs, empathy, youth agency, and decision-making. The second component of the Sandy Hook Promise is Say Something, inspired by the concept of the butterfly effect, a term Nicole referenced at her son Dylan's funeral. The theory likens children and youth to butterflies. When one wing of the butterfly flaps, the other wing can have far-reaching effects, such as creating or preventing a storm. The Say Something program educates both youth and adults in identifying warning signs and encourages them to communicate their concerns. An app allows users to report suspicious activity or issues anonymously, including those related to prolonged depression or social isolation. Nicole and Mark experienced the tragic loss of their children due to gun violence. Recognizing that people who struggle with loneliness and isolation might be helped if someone intervened. Thus, the Sandy Hook Promise was created. It establishes comprehensive systems aimed at safeguarding children and preventing other parents from enduring similar tragedies. This amplifies how kind curiosity can emerge unexpectedly during times of crises, and how grieving parents had the audacity to build in spite of their sorrow. In 2007, Shamaim Harris, better known as Mama Shu, lost her 2-year-old son, Jacoby Ra Harris, to a hit-and-run driver on the street outside their home in Highland Park, Michigan. Her grief could have stayed inside hospital corridors, in courtrooms, or closed-door conversations with family and friends. It could have hardened into silence and withdrawal. Instead, after laying her son to rest, she walked outside her home and started rebuilding her block. Mama Shu took the worst thing that can happen to a parent and turned it into a living, breathing village. Not a metaphysical village, but actual houses, gardens, classrooms, and marketplaces on a once abandoned block. It is, in every sense, a story about a mother who experienced unimaginable grief, but had the audacity to turn it into a physical place where children just like her son Jacoby could come and learn. In the months after Jacoby's death, Mama Shu began to look at a particular stretch of Avalon Street, the vacant lots. She imagined that village, an urban oasis where children could be safe, where neighbors could thrive, and where the memory of her son would be linked to beauty and not just pain. About 6 months after Jacoby died, a house on that block went up for sale. Mama Shu purchased it for a few $1,000s. With extensive repairs still being needed, she moved right in, sometimes without basic utilities. Slowly, she began turning that house and then the land around it into what is now known as Avalon Village. She did not begin with a foundation, a board, and a 5-year strategic plan. She began with a vision and a block, and she began while she was still deeply hurting. What started as heartbreak has become Avalon Village, a community-driven revitalization project that now spans roughly 45 parcels of land on Avalon Street in Highland Park, Michigan. Over time, those once abandoned lots have become Jacoby Raw Park, a park dedicated to her son, where families gather for events, music, and simple everyday joy. The Homework House, an after-school learning center where children can do homework, get tutoring, share a meal, and learn life skills in a safe environment. The Goodness Marketplace, an incubator and marketplace for women-owned businesses where local entrepreneurs sell food, clothing, candles, jewelry, and other goods while building economic power. Community gardens and healing spaces where neighbors grow food, sit in the gazebo, and find a measure of peace in the shadow of past loss. And a basketball court, a youth space where young people can play, move, and simply be children in relative safety. These are physical structures, parks, classrooms, markets, and gardens that grew out of a mother's decision that her son's name would be connected to more than just a police report or news clip. His story would be written into the architecture of a safer future. She did not just start a nonprofit. She began rebuilding safely, with dignity, seeing opportunity on the very streets where she lost her child, Jacoby. Mama Shu has often described her journey as turning grief into glory and pain into power, language that captures an important truth. Her grief did not disappear. It was transformed and channeled into something that could inspire and encourage others. It is easy from a distance to romanticize that transformation, to imagine a neat before and after story, tragedy, then healing, then a village. But the reality is much less tidy. She did not build Avalon Village because she was healed. She built while she was hurting. That distinction matters. Grief that is isolated, grief that is kept entirely inside of us, can harden into despair. It can become a belief that nothing can change, that no one will understand, and that the world is only what it was on the worst day of your life. But grief that is shared, grief that is spoken aloud and brought into the light, can become a movement. You see a similar pattern in a very different setting. Dr. Victor Strecher also faced the unthinkable, the loss of a child. His daughter Julia was born healthy, but as an infant contracted a virus that attacked her heart. She needed a heart transplant at just 14 months old, and later a second transplant at age 9. For years, her family knew that transplanted hearts have a limited lifespan. They made the most of their time together, traveling, riding elephants in Thailand, paragliding in the Rockies, jumping from cliffs into deep pools of water, doing what they called helping Julia live a big life. In 2010, when Julia was 19 years old, her heart stopped. She died while on a family vacation. For her father, Victor, his world ended. Victor is a professor at the University of Michigan School of Public Health. But no amount of scientific training could insulate him from that kind of loss. By his own account, for months after Julia's death, he did not care whether he lived or died. He describes himself as having lost all sense of purpose. About 6 months after Julia's death, he retreated alone to his home in northern Michigan. One morning, just before dawn, he woke up, dragged his kayak to Lake Michigan, and pedaled out in the half-light with the partial thought of paddling to Wisconsin. He was not entirely sure why. A few miles from shore, surrounded by water and silence, he began to sob. In that moment, he says, he felt Julia's presence and heard her voice say, "You've got to move forward, Dad." He would later realize this happened on Father's Day. That moment did not erase his grief. It did something more subtle and more demanding. It broke him open. From there, he immersed himself in philosophy, psychology, neuroscience, and spiritual writings, looking for language and frameworks that could describe and explain what he was living. He kept encountering the same idea across traditions, that having a clear, self-transcending purpose in life, something bigger than your own comfort or ego, is one of the strongest forces for resilience and well-being. Victor began to rebuild his life around that idea. I had the pleasure to read his novel called Life on Purpose: How Living for What Matters Most Changes Everything. It's his journey from grief into a path of understanding and purpose. He wanted to translate his findings and research to a broader audience. He launched new research and teaching focused on purpose, showing that people with a strong sense of meaning in their lives have better mental health, lower rates of depression, and even better physical outcomes over time. One comment from my interview with Victor that stands out most to me is his practice of teaching each student he instructs as if they were Julia. Not in a way to discipline, but in a way to counsel, support, and encourage. When Victor encounters a new set of students each year, he is reminded of his daughter and the life she lived. He is reminded that she spoke to him in that quiet place in his heart on Lake Michigan, saying, "Keep going, Dad." My interview with Victor was in 2026. Julia passed away in 2010. 16 years later, while speaking to him, he still got emotional and he still shed a tear. Because when a child is lost, there is never a getting over it. You get through it because you must. And Julia wanted her dad to keep going. But the pain of loss, of what could be, will always be there. His purpose included creating online courses like Finding Purpose and Meaning in Life It's reached tens of thousands of people around the world, many of them carrying their own private loss. It included founding Kamanu, a company to bring the science of purpose into workplaces and communities, building systems that help people connect everyday choices to what matters most to them. His Purpose Cast podcast speaks to inspiring stories of people who are living what matters most. And his Purposeful app is a daily reminder to users about being present and grateful each day. I downloaded the app and I absolutely love it. In other words, he did with ideas and systems what Mama Shu did with houses and parks, what the Sandy Hook Promise does for intervention, and what Melissa does with a place to celebrate and honor loved ones who have passed on. He took the raw material of grief, and instead of letting it collapse inward, he allowed it to expand outward into teaching, tools, and communities that might help other people who are barely hanging on. Victor and other parents in this story live in different worlds. Their purpose looks different on the surface, but underneath, there is a shared platform. They refuse to let grief remain private. They let themselves be broken open, or, in Victor's words, if this pain cannot be undone, what can it build? None of their paths turned tragedy into something worth it. What they did instead was insist that love would not end at the grave. For some people listening right now, this is not an abstract story. You may be grieving quietly. You may have lost a child or even a version of your life you thought you would have and live until you reached old age. You might be thinking, I don't want to build anything. I just want my child back. And that feeling is proper and okay. It is human. It is not a failure of character. Kind curiosity in this context is not a refusal to acknowledge pain. It is a decision to let love remain active, even when the person you love is no longer physically present. It might look like the Levi J. Burton Foundation, which was created by parents who grieved after they lost their son, Levi Jr. Their mission of walking alongside grieving parents helps with healing while supporting others. They hold an annual walk called A Walk to Remember to honor children lost to premature birth. It could look like the Day Foundation. That's DAYE, which was started when Day Harris passed away unexpectedly. The foundation's mission is dedicated to educating and supporting families with babies and toddlers on proper health care, education, and nutrition. His mother had the audacity to start the foundation to help others in her own time of grief. The Just Remembering 88 Foundation was created in memory of Chris Reed Jr., a young man whose life was cut short. He played football with his number being 88. Instead of allowing that number to become only a statistic, his family made it a symbol. The foundation focused on youth mentorship, scholarship, and community engagement. It creates programming that supports young people, especially young Black men, in navigating education, leadership, and life beyond the pressures of the streets. None of these actions erase grief. They simply ensure that grief does not have the final say about what their love can do in a world after they lost a child. It is the audacity to be kind that looks at a child playing on a basketball court in Jacoby Park and thinks, "You are here because my son is not," and then keeps building anyway. It is the audacity to be kind by creating a leaf with the name of the newly departed and placing it on a tree that also displays the name of your child. It is the audacity to embrace young people who are the same age as your daughter when she passed away and say within yourself, "You are my child." What can kind curiosity produce when the need to build and contribute is not buried with the one you loved? It can show up as noticing a child on your street who always looks hungry or alone and deciding to become a safe adult in their life. It's helping parents with nutritional support and guidance for their children. It's joining or starting a neighborhood group focused on a specific problem to help someone during a time of need. It's supporting an activist in your own region, an organization, a caregiver, a neighbor who is already doing the slow, unglamorous work of turning blight into beauty. If you are grieving, audacious kindness might mean letting one other person into that grief through a support group, a therapist, or a trusted friend. It's about allowing yourself to imagine, even faintly, that some future act of care could carry your loved one's name into spaces they never had the chance to walk into. You do not have to move quickly. You do not have to make your grief productive in ways that impress anyone. But you are allowed to ask a question: if this pain cannot be undone, what can it build? So as you move through your day, consider this. Where in your life is grief quietly sitting? And what might it look like for you, in your own way, to step outside and begin rebuilding something, however small? Not because you are over it, but because, like the parents in this episode, you sense that your love still has work to do. These parents did not deny their grief. They did not rush healing. They did not pretend to be strong. They built because they loved. And love, when it cannot go where it was meant to go, will look for another outlet. For those listening who are navigating loss, you are not required to build something out of your grief. You do not owe the world a nonprofit, a foundation, a project, or a platform. But if you do build, that is not a betrayal of your child. That is a continuation of your love. It is making sure your child's name is continued to be spoken. If you or someone you know needs help, there are resources that are readily available. Calling 988 or 211 in the United States will get you in touch with a mental health and suicide crisis specialist. I'm Felicia. Thank you for listening. If this episode resonated with you, please leave a comment, like, and subscribe. Until next time.